So J. Edgar Hoover famously said, "There will never be another black messiah unless we create him." Well, that's an interesting statement. What does J. Edgar Hoover mean by we? Does he mean the FBI? I don't think so. However, I would argue that Tupac is by far the closest thing to a black messiah in modern culture, period. The nearest thing to Tupac in terms of being a black messiah is another musical character, Bob Marley. And so these are faces that you see on t-shirts around the world. So I certainly would argue that Tupac is exactly the sort of black messiah that would be created by the J. Edgar Hoovers of the world. It's well known to those who pay attention that there were deals in place for high-level executives who were working in cahoots with the prison industry, the for-profit prison industry, to promote certain rappers. Well, what rapper had more influence than Tupac, and what did Tupac promote? Thug life. So where does thug life lead you? Nonetheless, Tupac is treated as a religious figure by many people. He's revered. I don't want to say he's worshipped because no one's actually worshiping him, I don't think. But he is very revered, and he's considered as being an anti-establishment figure. So is Bob Marley. Again, you have to remember, it's just a simple fact that these men were propped up by some of the biggest corporations in the world. Those corporations put their voice in everyone's ear. Those corporations put their face on every magazine. So to suggest that these men are anti-authority figures should be greeted with skepticism right off the jump. And of course, there are many conspiracy theories surrounding Tupac, especially around his death. And of course, I do have my thoughts and opinions on those. As you know, for those who may be familiar with the other videos I've done on this channel, we know that the music industry is very closely related to the military-industrial complex. And so it should come as no surprise that it's also related to the prison-industrial complex. And so what they're really doing, the music industry, is creating these religious figures. You know, Tupac is a religious figure, just like Jim Morrison was a religious figure. They're all religious figures. They are worshipped by their fans, just like the TV stars and celebrities. You know, you see this over and over again. A celebrity does some kind of misdeed, and all these fans jump up to defend them. Someone they've never met, never done anything for them. They don't know them in person, don't know what kind of person they are, and yet they'll defend them to the death. So it is with Tupac, but even more so, because he became the voice of a segment of the black community that is still heavily oppressed and is suffering through a mental oppression. And so, but by in a way personifying that, they relate to him, and yet he's not there to help them. He's there to lead them into thug life. But rather than sit here and talk about the conspiracy theories, I would like to actually talk about the effects that Tupac's music had on people. This is a topic that seemingly manages to go completely swept under the rug by the people who idolize Tupac. How intensely negative his actual music was. And so that's why I want to tell you the story of the white Tupac, because for one thing, it illustrates the fact that I am from the generation that was most influenced by Tupac. I was influenced by Tupac. Many people obviously were incredibly influenced by Tupac, and that is the point of the story. The problem, I think, for me is that a lot of people don't seem to be able to outgrow their teen idols or even get to a point where they can question them. And so, without further ado, here is the story of white Tupac. This happened in the mid-90s in Ohio. I was not living in Ohio at the time this happened. However, I was out there visiting because my mother lived out in Ohio. However, previously I had lived out in Ohio for 2 years, and then I had spent a couple summers out there with my mother. Okay, so I'm in Ohio, I'm visiting out there, and one of my homeboys goes, "Hey, do you want to meet this guy? Let's go to the next town over. I want you to meet this guy I know, who is, some sort of gang member." For those who don't know, Ohio was very gang infested, and so my friends and I were kind of like part of a little wannabe gang that was sort of adjacent to another bigger gang. But we never did anything besides petty crime. We weren't out there gangbanging or anything like that. However, this guy that he wanted to introduce me to supposedly was on some kind of violent tip. So anyways, I go with my friend to meet this guy, and it's a white kid, and he's like 100% white, and he's got a lot of tattoos and stuff. And so we start talking to him, and it becomes kind of clear he's like rarely into gangbanging and stuff. Like, he wants to go do violence to a bunch of people he doesn't really know. So, with us, we kind of knew we were gonna wannabes. Like, we didn't want to go shooting at people. We were in it to just trying to hang out, party, smoke weed, maybe do a little petty crime, shoplifting. It was that type of thing. So this guy was on some more heavy shit. So anyways, we're talking to this guy, and then he gets up, right? And he pulls his shirt up, and right across his belly, he's got Thug Life. Exactly the same tattoo as Tupac. Exactly the same tattoo in exactly the same place across his belly. So I think when I saw this tattoo, I couldn't suppress a laugh. I mean, it is crazy. Even then, when I was a dickhead, juvenile delinquent, I knew that was crazy. You don't get a tattoo that Tupac had. I mean, and thankfully he didn't get the 50 N-words tattoo. So, but I was just like, wow, this is the kind of influence that Tupac had, and his influence went through the roof once he became a movie star. Once Tupac did Juice, his influence went crazy. And just think about the image that he was promoting in Juice, the character that he was playing. Some people say that Tupac he grew up as an actor. He went to acting school and drama school and all this stuff, and they say that he sort of became that Bishop character. I don't know how true that is. Of course, I never met Tupac myself. However, you would know that Tupac isn't exactly who you thought he was if you had seen some of these videos that have been done about him, specifically referencing the footage from his childhood, because it seems like so many of these superstars, he's been in front of the camera his whole life, and that he's been involved in these performing arts schools and all this stuff his whole life. And so, his career does, in fact, follow the pattern of the Laurel Canyon musicians to some extent. Let's put it this way. Someone like Tupac would never have been placed in the position he was by the powers that be to make him a super duper star, a black messiah, so to speak, if he wasn't there for a very specific purpose and completely controlled. But again, Tupac was very good at playing two sides of the role. And so, as someone who grew up in this era, I saw the effects that violent hip-hop, which became trap later, which became drill later. You see the progress? If you look at the trajectory of hip-hop, it's been straight downhill. You started with The Message, an anti-drug song, and other anti-drug songs from the golden era. And then you had gangster rap came in towards the late 80s, early 90s, and completely took over. But at first they were just selling crack to the neighborhood. Then in the 90s and in the 2000s, they started doing the crack. Then they started becoming drug addicts. And now they're just drillers, and they just go out and just shoot each other just for really no reason at all. So it's insane that the effects that this music has had on the community, and a lot of people are really in denial about it. And a lot of people aren't in denial about it. And a lot of people know exactly what I'm saying is true, but those voices are silenced. There are plenty of people who lived through these eras that can tell you the effects that the music had, and yet they'll still come around and defend Tupac. They'll still defend their childhood teen idols. And as far as we know, still to this day, that guy has that Tupac, that Thug Life tattoo right across his belly. I mean, that guy is probably in prison now, if you think about it. But in my opinion, that is the real effect of Tupac. People delude themselves that like Tupac was some kind of positive message or something. Bullshit. It's like Nas. Nas is another one. People think Nas is a positive rapper. Really? Why? Because he's so articulate with his wordplay that makes him positive? When all he talks about is drug dealing and guns and shooting people and pimping women and luxury clothes and luxury cars and big chains. I mean, that's what 95% of Nas's music is about. But what does anybody remember? I Can. Okay, he did one positive song, and we're willing to put him on a pedestal for all that negative shit he pumped out. So, the same with Tupac. You got Dear Mama, right? Nas has I Can, and Tupac has Dear Mama. What's Tupac's other positive song? I'll wait. Brenda Got a Baby, what, from his first album when nobody knew him? But listen, by anyone's standards, including mine, Tupac was an amazing rapper, possibly the best rapper ever. Why? Because of his ability to evoke emotion, right? His ability to evoke emotion in his lyrics. And so again, people don't have the ability to separate it. I still listen to Tupac every now and then, but I'm not under any delusion of what I'm listening to. I'm listening to a character that's created by corporations and record companies and writers and screenwriters, and Tupac is a creation. He's a character that's used to sell records and products. And very likely he was trained from birth to play that role with all his acting and everything else that he did as a child. But again, it's not a conspiracy theory. The lyrics are there. You can print them out, you can read them. Just like I said about Nas, what does Tupac talk about? What does he call women? What is a woman in Tupac's world? What is the word for a woman? We all know it. So it's amazing to me that people can just blindly defend him. And I've seen it on like the YouTube channels and stuff when there are videos about Tupac and anyone comes in questioning Tupac. It says, there'll be 100 positive comments about Tupac. Tupac, the greatest ever, Tupac. And so, yeah, I wanted to let you know. I wanted to, in a way, I guess, speak up for the white Tupac because, people talk about or they argue about or they want to sweep it under the rug the effects that this violent music had on the black community. But here's an effect it had on the white community. There's some white kid, 100% white, sitting in prison right now because of Tupac's music, partially. In part. Of course, it's not truly the music that made him get that tattoo. But see, what happens is you have a kid like that who has an abusive childhood. His father beats him, right? That's why he's violent. His father beats him, or his stepfather beats him, or someone beats him. He's treated like garbage as a child. And he's abused in other ways, probably neglected. And so, as he goes to be an adult, he's very angry. And he's messed up. And so along comes this famous, super duper famous person that everybody wants to be around. And everybody wants to be telling you that, yeah, go live a thug life, man. All your anger it's great. Go use it. Go be a thug. This is what real men do. They pick up a gun and they shoot the opposition. So to a mentally ill white kid, he picked up on that. As so many abused and hurt and fatherless kids, right? Who joins the gangs? The kids who don't have father figures. And so in a way, these music idols, these music industry idols become the father figures, and they become the shamans of an entire generation. A corporate product is our shaman. So that's where we're at in society. And that's what Tupac is. He's a corporate product, just like all the rest of them. Hip-hop was authentic for probably about 5 seconds. As always, the real originators, the ones who really came up with the stuff that was copied by the people who were made famous, are long forgotten and probably died broke. Not that there's anything wrong with that, because their life was its own validation. They're creators. Being a creator is its own reward. But when we look back and we say, let's give them flowers and let's honor the greats of hip-hop, the greats of the hip-hop have all been long forgotten already. And the people that we're honoring and giving flowers are just a bunch of corporate products who are put there to sell you drugs, sell you drug dealing, sell you gangs, violence, materialism. Gotta have the latest shirt, the latest shoes, the latest car, or you're nothing, you're nobody. So we all know what the messages that are being pumped by hip-hop are, and Tupac did it too. He wasn't materialistic. Come on. Give me a break. Listen to his music. He wasn't as materialistic as Biggie. I mean, I'm not going to talk about Biggie. Never has been one of my favorite rappers. But don't forget, Biggie had that song about suicide. I wonder how many people committed suicide listening to that song by Biggie. In fact, I do know of one person who commits suicide listening to Tupac's Dear Mama. Again, not blaming Tupac, but what are the emotions that are being evoked by this music? Are they positive emotions that make you want to do something with your life, or are they negative emotions that make you want to lash out and do drugs and drink a 40 ounce and go destroy yourself? Go get tattoos all over. Go get Thug Life tatted on your belly. So for the rest of your life, everyone will know you're a thug, because hip-hop is in itself a religion. And what I've just told you about the originators being long forgotten is not known or understood by many people. They don't know that the Sugar Hill Gang were just a ripoff, because the song was so good and it was so well produced and it was so well marketed. So the corporate sellouts always have the advantage of having the best producers, the best promotion, and all that. So yeah, their music would sound better. So the religion of hip-hop in the minds of so many cannot be questioned. Like other things which have become negative, people want to take credit for it instead of actually questioning why this music was unleashed on their community and why it was so heavily promoted. And of course, you now know what I think about it, and that is why I led with the quote that I did. That was the story of the white Tupac. I hope he's not in prison. I'm sure he probably is. I'm sure there are lots of white kids who would probably be laughed at for taking hip-hop too seriously because they loved it and they fell in love with their teen idols and the music and the rhythm and the power of Tupac's voice and the image of Tupac, the Black Messiah. Yeah, some white kids fell in love with that and they suffered for it because Tupac wasn't put there to give you a positive role model. None of the role models that are put there to be your role models are positive figures. And if you read between the lines of what J. Edgar Hoover said, they fear, maybe, a real Black Messiah coming. So, but it's always easy to push that one to the side and prop up the Tupacs because they have this system behind them. So everyone can hear their voice, everyone can see their image, everyone can hear their little speeches. Tupac's little pseudo-positive speeches that he liked to give in the interviews, talking all revolutionary, but on his records, the things that actually get played over and over again, he's talking about thug life, and he's talking about shooting people and gang stuff and revenge. And so that's who Tupac really was. So yeah, how long will they mourn me? Tupac, it seems like they're going to mourn Tupac forever. But who's going to mourn the white Tupac? It's the Great Plague.